Very good morning once again. I'm glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. If you are just joining us, welcome on board. We are emboldened by your company and having all hands on deck. Our Kickstarter does begin in earnest, and over the next 1.5 hours we'll be speaking on a range of issues. First, we'll be tracking the 39 years of the national resistance movement in light of yesterday's celebration of the 39th Liberation Day of the NRA. The debates are on, but what I know is that for those within the national resistance movement, the party hangover should be on right now, because as tradition has it, there should be some dinner, some banquets somewhere. I don't know whether that is as elaborate as we have come to know of other celebrations in the country. I'll be asking a top NRM poncho very soon on how exactly that went. But just to keep you on focus, later during the Kickstarter, we shall also go into an introspection of the Kawempe North constituency ahead of the by-election that was occasioned by the death of Honorable Sejirinya Mohammed. The candidates that are vying to replace him are many, and it's causing a bit of a dilemma for the National Unity Platform because they are claiming to be NUP and NOP alone. Interesting there. Whether there will be a primary to determine exactly what the party fronts as the candidate in that race also remains to be seen. Later, we shall also look at the progress of the ongoing Electoral Commission voter registration and verification exercise that is going on across the country. So this is a conversation that you don't want to miss. But to begin with the 39 years of the national resistance movement, the celebration of the 39th Liberation Day was yesterday in Mubende, and the president presided over that event. With me in studio is the deputy RCC Rubaga. He's Henry Kitambula. Mr. Kitambula, welcome to Morning at NTV once again.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
Great. As we begin the conversation, and like I have stated, the 39 years of the NRM, then NRA, at the time it took power in 1986, provide for reflection, debate, and so much. But like I hinted in our preamble, the parties must have gone on last evening within the national resistance movement. I do not know whether you were part of them, and you've been able to make it on Morning at NTV. We are honored.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Because I had some other assignments I was handling.
Okay.
But spiritually I was there.
Spiritually.
And I want to welcome whoever was there. To welcome whoever was there back. And thank them really for being part of that occasion.
That's right. And
you know, in Uganda these days, you don't force people to go and celebrate. Because of the freedom, people are free to choose whether to go or not. I want to use an analogy of a family. When there is plenty of food at home, when the mother prepares food and calls the children to come to come and eat, some of them may choose to continue playing because they know after all their food will be kept. But if there is a scarcity of food and you prepare something, they will not even wait for you to call them. They will keep around to see whether food is ready, such that nobody misses. So that is freedom. Because there is too much freedom, people can choose. But if there wasn't freedom, you would see people scrambling to go to where there is a function. So we have really to celebrate that, and there is no offense for not attending a national function because you have the freedom to do whatever you want. But I will come back whoever was there.
Okay.
Hope you were there. Or you also there in spirit?
I was monitoring online in light of my assignments as a multimedia journalist. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to just ensure that we are on track, especially with regard to how we shall be moving in this particular Kickstarter. We shall be going for 1.5 hours there. But staying with Mr. Henry Kitambula on the Liberation Day or the NRM Day, I want to ask the question before we go into the nitty-gritty. There is concern about the choice of words. Liberation versus Victory Day. There are some who think the day should be NRM Victory Day, not NRM Liberation Day. What's your take on that?
It should be NRM Liberation Day, not a Victory Day. It should be Liberation Day, because we were liberated for information. When you look at the freedom we have, when you look at the peace we have, when you look at the infrastructure we have, the media, and all those other departments, fields, you realize that everybody was liberated. Everybody was liberated. This country was liberated. Now when you call it NRM Victory Day, it's as if it ends with NRM, or NRM party. But this is a Ugandan liberation. It's only that NRA stroke NRM led the battle, and they successfully finished the battle and handed over the liberation to us. So they fought to liberate us, not to liberate themselves. So that's why it's better we stick to the NRM Liberation Day. In fact, all of the years we have been calling it Liberation Day. I was only surprised this time when I saw again NRM stroke NRA Victory Day. And I was asking some of my colleagues, where is this one coming from? Because it can spark another debate as you are now putting it across. So I think to the National Organizing Committee and all of those that are in the kitchen are preparing synopses and what have you, they should always stick to the Liberation Day, because this is really a Liberation Day, not a Victory Day, as I saw in the theme. In the film. All right. Now, for the last 39 years, a lot has gone on. There has been transformation. There has been changes. There has also inevitably been fatigue. When you look at the ideals of the National Resistance Army in the run-up to power in 1986, vis-a-vis the National Resistance Movement now, what would be your assessment of the trajectory if it were a progress line? Do you see the ideals of the National Resistance Army being achieved, or those objectives being reached by the National Resistance Movement today? Well, first of all, I want to correct one impression. During the Bush struggle, there was the NRA. That was the arm of the combatants. Then there was the NRM. That was the political wing. And I think that political wing was headed by Alhaji Moses Chigongo. So NRA and NRM both participated in the Bush struggle, the political arm and the military arm. Now when they came to power, of course there was separation. The military remained the military, and the name was even changed from NRA to UPDF. And then along the way, in around 2005, NRM, the other NRM, also now ceased to exist, and it became NRM political organization. So right now we have NRM political organization, not the other NRM. We no longer have NRA, we have the UPDF. But because NRA and NRM participated in the liberation struggle, then we are celebrating what they did. We are remembering them, we salute their efforts, and we are saying, yes, now we are moving into another arrangement of UPDF and for the political side, we are having the National Resistance Movement Political Organization, not NRM, not the other NRM. This is now NRMO. So I wanted to correct that. So as we,
the nomenclature there is disturbing, and you would forgive somebody who is trying to come to terms with what this is exactly. Because when you say the NRA was the military wing of the political movement at the time, what was the classification of the political movement during the Bush War?
I will not go into the classification, but the political wing, the NRM, they had a specific role of mobilizing the masses to support the liberation struggle. They had that role of mobilizing the masses to support the struggle, but also to look for a few things, for example, food and what have you, say that the combatants, the combatants can successfully live and handle the battle. So there is no confusion in this.
All right, maybe.
But moving forward, I want to thank you, because in your introduction, you are as if you are saying that we have made some achievements along the way. That is in your introduction. And indeed, when you look at Uganda at 1986, by the way, I think I was here with you, and I made a statement that each to many Ugandans and even each to you. When I took you back to the Uganda of
No, I remember you dismissing the administration before the NRM.
Very good, and you are not happy with it.
I wasn't.
So I will not go back to that.
Please don't.
Let me just look at the 1986 scenario. First of all, 1986 is January. That's when they came to power, and they found Uganda. If I can look at the economy, I can say the economy was nosediving. Because the inflation rate in 85 was 237%. The inflation rate, 237%. That's too much. Then the economic growth was a negative 3.31. That is in 85. When you look at the other things like the revenue collection were completely down. So I can say that the NRA and NRM then inherited a country whose economic situation was really worrying. So they had to build the economy from scratch, because zero was far above us. When you look at negative economic growth, that means a zero was far better. If you had a zero, you would even celebrate. So from that scratch, they had to struggle. Remember, there was low revenue collection. Then, of course, the international forces, IMF, World Bank, they were saying, you look, since you have come to power, pursue ABCD to ensure that you revamp the economy. And some of the policies that we inherited initially, or at that time, many of them were dictated by IMF. Remember the issue of privatization? Of course, the NRM's intention was to have, actually it was one of the 10-point programs to pursue a mixed economy. And a mixed economy means you're bringing in the private sector. Now, when the IMF and the World Bank saw that we are pursuing a mixed economy, where government and the private sector would really run the economy, I think they never wanted us to have a 50-50. So they said, now, you privatize most of these things. Say that, one, the private sector can run them effectively. Then number two, you can save the revenue that would have been used to run some of these these entities, and that's why we privatized. Of course, some went on so well, save a few. Now, like the Uganda Commercial Bank and a few others, but by and large, we also said yes, you are telling us to do this, but we should really go and also build our self-sustaining economy. And that's why we started with the issue of infrastructure, because without infrastructure you cannot talk about economic growth, you cannot talk about economic development.
Yeah.
But still,
that argument is perfectly understandable.
As you were trying to put up the infrastructure, because of the small revenue collection, they could still dictate. For example, when we were constructing roads, whenever we could go to them, they could say, yes, you are constructing this road, but what comes from that road?
What comes from that road?
So they had to dictate, give priority to this one, leave. So it became really a big challenge at that time. But we want to thank God that
Mr.
our
RCC
revenue has grown, and now
grown, no doubt. Mr. RCC, allow me hold you in your tracks there. We shall be delving a little deeper later into the economics of the 39 years, but allow me introduce and welcome on the show a senior citizen and seasoned political commentator, Captain Francis Babu. You always start your day on Morning at NTV by burning the early morning candle, since it's morning, not midnight.
Good morning.
Good. How are you?
I'm fine, and I hope you're well. And thank you for inviting me here on this day when the South Sudan government has closed the internet, and he's been warned by the East African Law Council, and a few other people have been complaining bitterly. And then hearing Mr. Trump saying that all the Palestinians in Gaza should be taken to Jordan and Egypt. So an interesting...
very interesting morning there.
Very interesting weekend, not really morning.
And of course, they're hearing Mr. Trump's suggestions. He's a very eccentric fellow. But in light of our discussion this morning, you heard from the RCC. We're trying to do an introspection. This is for the benefit of the readings of history. Many times the wordings and descriptions of events and times does entirely depend on those who write the story, not those who come and read. And so it's important that we understand the facts and the dynamics within. When we hear the National Resistance Army, that establishment was the driver of the force that led President Henry Kitambula and a host of others into the bush in 1981. It wasn't a political movement at the time. Mr. Kitambula speaks of the movement that helped organize outside of the military outfit. You have a very, very good understanding of these things, and maybe what was at the time where we, or rather when I say we, it seems like I was there, but what was the facts on the ground?
The problem is a lot of people in today's politics prefer propaganda and lies. But you've got to go back and look at this country. Look at it from the time when the British came here, 70 years they ruled us. 1962 we got independence. There's a word we call independence. I've never had people asking us, every time they talk about independence, why should we celebrate? Because they don't know what we're talking about. 70 years of a man ruling you from London and giving you orders and even paying you your salary, and suddenly saying, now you can do it by yourself, that's called independence. He's allowing you to do it yourself. So thereafter, from independence time, so we now have, if you like, periods. So the period from 1962 to 1985, a lot of things happened. One, the first government, first of all, you keep on talking about this. By the way, before I forget, a man in the United States, one of the senators, has just moved a motion that there should be a third term for President Trump.
It won't happen.
That's up to you, but he has moved it. A constitutional amendment. And let's go ahead. I just want to tell you that these things do happen, do they? So let's go back now to this point. So from 1960, even the army to go and chase civilian started in 1960 by the Karamojongs. In fact, one of the British recommendations to the new government was that the people who had committed atrocities in Karamoja should not be allowed. Then they came. In 1964, there was something called Lost Counties. They had a referendum. The special forces and the army came out, and the people were killed here in Kampala, starting from Nankurabi all the way up to the main, where you have your northern bypass now. Anyway, that is the story for another day. And then there was the ministers who went to jail. 1966, they removed the constitution using a written constitution and putting it in the pigeonhole. In 1967, we had a republican constitution also written, and in 1971 we had a military.
Was tossed.
So all those things put together ended up in 1980 with the Tanzanians coming and helping us to liberate this country. They threw out the military government and they took over. So all these things put together. So when people talk that the reason you went to the bush was because of election, no, it was because of all the culmination of all these and adding them together and creating a situation where this country had reached a point of having no state. Some people say a failed state. Now, a group of young people went and wanted to have a revolution. Let's leave the names out. They wanted a change. They wanted this country to become normal again. They had started earlier on in a different, there's something called Fronasa. There was also another one, People's Redemption Army, and so on and so forth. All those came up. Then many different forces decided they were going to fight. It was the combination of those forces that came out with something called NRM, NRA. NRM being the political wing, and the other one being the army that was fighting, a revolutionary army, if you like. It is that revolutionary army that continued fighting against the army of then the incumbent government. So you're having this coming up, and therefore, from that point up to the point in 1986, that was the army that was fighting. It was then called the political wing came up with a system. Saying, look, now we can start from the village so that we can have a system. It was called a movement system. That movement system was used during that time to galvanize, to get the people working towards that. So, and I think this is where the mistake came. In 2005, when the Constitution, by the way, one of the biggest things they did, but when people say, what were you liberating? One, there was no constitution. It had been played around with. Okay. So we agreed to do another constitution. So when these people got into power, they liberated the country. Unfortunately for them, they thought it was a very easy thing that within 4 years they could do it. No. When you break a house, it takes a long time to build it. So they started building. And one of the basis of the foundation was to start with a constitution that was accepted by all the people in this country. And they did. Now, during that period, they had come out with a 10-point program in 1984, by the way. And that 10-point program was a minimum program to try and bring the country back to normal. That minimum program, which started with democracy, had security, consolidation of national unity and elimination of all forms of sectarianism, defending the consolidated national independence, building an independent, integrated and self-sustaining economy, restoration and improvement of social services and the rehabilitation of the war-ravaged areas, elimination of corruption and misuse of power, redressing errors that have resulted in disclosing of sections of the population and improving others, cooperation with the African countries in defending human and democratic rights of our brothers and other parts of Africa, following an economic strategy of mixed economy.
Captain Babu,
I'm coming to that.
We'll be discussing that
very shortly. There's a reason for that.
Very shortly, when we return from the break.
That was a minimum program.
Time is not our best ally around about this time, but that conversation, of course, will come through, and a lot more on the NRA, NRM Liberation celebrations that were held yesterday. Do stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us, and the Kickstarter does continue. We went into the break at a point when Captain Francis Babu was sharing the 10-point program in light of what the National Resistance Army and a movement at the time set out to do when they captured power in 1986. For history purposes, the 26th of January is the day the soldiers of the National Resistance Army marched onto Kampala, effectively taking power. 3 days later, on the 29th of January, President Kaguta Museveni, at the time Yoweri Museveni, was sworn in on the steps of Parliament, where he took oath and promised a fundamental change. Right now, before we go into the nitty-gritty of the 10-point program as espoused by Captain Francis Babu, let's see events on January 29th, 1986, as Yoweri Kaguta Museveni took oath of office. All right, as we wait on to that video, especially one that ought to give us perspective and educate those that may not be initiated in the dynamics of the history of the National Resistance Army, let's just go to Captain Francis Babu, where we shall allow you submit on that critical issue as we wait for that particular video. You had listed the 10 points that were given by the National Resistance Army.
The reason I give that, every revolution must have an aim. And a lot of people are using this as a political tool to describe it. This was a revolution for things that had gone wrong over the years. And these 10-point programs gave you the areas where they had gone wrong at the time. Now, a lot of people trying to speak like now when there is peace and everything, and people think it is a political, it's part of political parties. No, there was no political parties then. It was do or die. They were fighting a system. The army was fighting against young people. A lot of young people left the university. And sometimes when I hear people talking about that war, I really get frightened, because a lot of young people lost their lives. And they're scattered all over the areas where this war took place. They are buried there, their bones are there. And when I hear them talking, I see them dancing around the graves of these people. Now, I'm not talking here in support of the government as such. I am talking about the revolution. Now, from the revolution, I am going to talk about then the government that came. Now, those are two different things. I wanted you to realize that at that time, the atmosphere, what was there was a war of revolution to change what had gone wrong. And a lot of people, including many, some of them are old people now, took part in trying to put this country corrected. And the problem had started after independence, and some of them we had inherited from the British. And here we now had a situation. So these people came in, they gave their reasons why they were doing it, and those reasons are the 10-point programs. Now the question would be, how much of this have we achieved? Thereafter, by the way, I must thank those combatants who took part in that. Some of them, their brothers and sisters, their children, and everybody are buried all over the place. So when I hear people, talk about this, I get a little bit worried. I don't want it to happen again to this country. It was not good. A lot of people lost their lives, but then what they lost is what you people are walking around with and talking the way you talk, because things are a little bit better then. Now, after that, they came into power. They had thought that they could do it in 4 years, by the way. That's what they came with. And if the first half of this period, a lot of things were done. Right from the beginning, they embarked on consolidating the national unity of the elimination of the form of sectarianism. The question is, how much can you give here in terms of percentage? Now, democracy we're talking about, is it here? Security, is it here? These are the kind of things you should be ticking on this 10-point program. The other one, defending and consolidating national independence. Yes, do we have Uganda? Is it independent? Those are the kind of things we should be talking about. Building independent, integrated, and self-sustaining national economy. Now, that's another point you should ask. How is our economy? A lot of people, when they are talking, they talk on a personal level. Restoration and improvement and rehabilitation of war-ravaged areas. Now, people don't talk about this, but Masaka was completely finished, and Mbarara. People have to rebuild it. Now, these are very important. In fact, there was a program of government of rehabilitation. There was a program of the custodian properties of Indians. There was a program of privatization, which some of us did not agree with in some areas, but it happened. It was there. It was part of trying to improve the economy.
Yeah.
Things went wrong, I mean, nothing is ever perfect in the world. Human beings have got those weaknesses. Elimination of corruption and misuse of power. How are we doing on that one? Right from the time they came into power. Now, this is where a lot of people do not reason. You should reason. What really happened? Now, in 2005, because of forces, because of people complaining, after making the constitution, they wanted a multi-party system. And the movement system which had come with the combatant, they said, we don't want that. We just a one-party state and things like. Eventually, the government which was in power had a small. I think we even voted whether we should go multi-parties or we should stay movement. Multi-parties won. We went back to multi-party. Now, there was a problem there, which caused a problem, was to name the party in a national resistance movement, national resistance organization. Now that created a problem because now nobody delinks the revolutionary group to this multi-party political party. This is where the problem is. And when people are talking, oh, but see, we as NRM, no, but that revolutionary group, some of them did not even take part in politics after that. They retired. They left the government and they went away. But here, a group that remained formed a party because of the new dispensation, and they became a multi-party organization. Now, a lot of people try to combine this with the group that fought. Some of the people who fought are in the opposition now. Who fought during that time? They're in the opposition. Some of them are not taking part in politics. They
actually were in the opposition at the time that particular transformation was undertaken.
Correct. So when people talk opposition, sometimes I laugh. We are all together, and you wanted multi-parties, you brought them. The question is whether they are doing a good job or not. Now, one of the things that people keep, oh, but you see, we don't have this. Yes, they were here in the 10-point program. You can now tick them off. Is democracy there? Some form of democracy, not perfect, but it's there, yes. Security, the security of Uganda, how is it? You give it marks. Consolidation of our independence, of national independence. Do we have independence? People recognize there's a country called Uganda, which got independence on the 9th of October? Yes, Uganda is there. Then building an independent, integrated and self-sustaining national economy. Now, that is where the point is. By the way, a lot of people talk about parties. Parties in Western countries were based mainly on the economy. Either government controls the economy, private sector controls the economy, or you combine both, which brought us to this point of a mixed economy. Now, this went on, and a lot of people did not follow this. But if you go into it one by one, you can find out how they are formed. Building, restoration and improvement of social services. How are we doing there? Now, this is where they always say, oh, the roads are not doing very well, the hospitals, the schools. It was there. It was one of the points. The question is, if you really was reasonable, and you looked at today, we had one university when these people came in power. How many universities do we have? We had so many schools. How many schools do we have now? We might not have what we wanted to have, but how many schools are there now? Have they improved? The population of Uganda has increased. It is now 46 million. When they came in power, they were about 12 billion. So there is an increase in population, which requires more resources. So these are all points that we should all be talking about. And then elimination of corruption and misuse of power. How are we doing there? Not very well. Are we? We are having a lot of problems with it.
A lot of problems with it.
We are having IGG, we have anti-corruption units, this corruption unit, that corruption unit.
And since you speak of the fact that there was population growth that requires a lot more resources in order to ensure services are delivered to the people, and we have corruption and graft that is failing that particular endeavor, maybe let's focus there a bit.
Yeah, you can, but
the government be doing
let's have all of them so that we can do it. Redressing the errors that have resulted in dislocation of section of the population and improving on others. In other words, there was a problem where they were dividing this country. Sectarianism. That one we must also look at. How are we doing on the sectarianism basis? You know, cooperation with African countries. How are we doing with the integration of the East African community, for example? This mixed economy, how are we doing with it? Now, so the whole point I'm trying to say is that if you want to judge what has happened, you look at this and you give it marks. You talk to each one, but you don't talk about one. You talk about the whole lot, and you see which ones have been achieved and which ones have not been achieved.
Now, the dilemma is, especially for a moderator like me on Morning at NTV, is the time allotted to have a conversation as exhaustively as you may want it. That's a bit of a dilemma. Now, I want to focus. I won't be going into how we are doing on the security aspect. Why? Because I consider that a given. Every state must provide security for its citizens.
Yes.
That's a given.
Yes.
Whether that security is watertight or airtight, I should not go on and say, okay, here we are, that is it.
But when you're criticizing, somebody, you should give both sides.
No, I'm not a hard one, am I?
No. What I wanted to say, yes, every state must provide security to its people, but we have states that have failed. Therefore, if you have a state that have really tried to protect its citizens, you give it credit.
That is no doubt. We appreciate that. But allow me focus on corruption, sectarianism, and the economic prong. Because at the end of the day,
there's another point here.
Those are the three there is a bit of a problem.
When my senior was submitting, you know, he was part of the team that I think the brain behind the formation of NRM organization. But I want to remind him that all of those 10-point programs were summarized into 4: patriotism, non-sectarianism, democracy, and social economic transformation. Because somebody may ask us, we are not hearing you talking about the 10-point programs. Why? They were summarized into 4 when we went to the multi-party dispensation. Now, the aspect of corruption that has blighted efforts to ensure that most of the programs that were highlighted by the NRA before coming to power are in a bit of a spot of bother. Talk to us about what your take on corruption is. Right now, graft is reaching levels in this country that are unacceptable, unimaginable, and generally despicable, I must say that, to the extent that even the IGG herself says it has moved from the traditional aspects of bribery, theft, to clinical massaging of figures, money, to the extent that we saw a scenario, including the one at the Bank of Uganda, where funds are diverted deliberately from where they're supposed to go. Maybe, first of all, we all agree that there is a graft, there is corruption. But that one, nobody can say there isn't. But I think we are missing one point in the battle against corruption. The battle begins with the person, the service, the recipient of the service we are rendering.
The recipient?
The recipient of the service we are rendering. That common person, if you empower him or her, he can always bring to your attention what is happening on the ground. Somebody will say, look, I've seen somebody packing medicine in a flask. Somebody may say, I've seen somebody packing medicine in a coffin. When I was in Machindi, we arrested somebody around in Namamvi. The person had packed drugs in a coffin. But every morning I could see a coffin, every morning. And I could meet the coffin on a motorcycle. So I became suspicious.
You wondered, the death rate in that
somebody told me that is something they are hiding. It's not a dead body. And we swung in action. So, empower the common person. In fact, one day I heard the president mention that he was so surprised to see that an elected leader, somebody elected by the people at the level of a sub-county or a district, conniving with the technical person to swindle money meant for the service of his or her people. So the president really wondered. So he thought, once a leader is elected, he's a leader who will fight for the people who elected him or her. So to the contrary, it's not really, it's actually to the contrary when you go to the ground. So I think we should begin with a common person, then we come to the elected leaders at the lowest level. Up this side, money lives and it goes down. So if the other person at the district does not really follow up, this money can come back as a kickback. So how do you handle that? The elected leader should be in a position to handle some of these issues. Okay. Then number two,
very quickly,
we have put in place the bodies, the entities to fight corruption. And those entities are somehow scaring the corrupt. When you talk about the declaration of the Assets Act, after 2 years we declare assets, some of us who are in the government. Then the Auditor General, the IGG, when you go to Parliament that does the oversight role, they have committees like PAC, like COSASE. I don't know how effective they are, but they are there. Maybe I want to appeal to everybody who is in the battle. Let us really walk the talk. Let us not only talk, let us walk the talk. If we all walk the talk, we shall win the battle against corruption. If we massage, definitely we shall have issues. But that is really crippling service delivery, because I remember one day I mentioned about the syndicated corruption, which is extremely difficult to handle.
We'll be talking about that very shortly, including corruption at the top. When you focus, for example, on what you say are recipients that need to be empowered, then we ask the questions, how about those who are already empowered to do the job but abuse that power by stealing mercilessly? But first, let's take a listen in on some of the plans and achievements of the last 39 years of the NRA as espoused by President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Our own reporter Jackson Onyango has that.
The 39th Liberation Day celebration has successfully been held at Mubende National Teachers College in Mubende Municipality. The occasion was graced by people from all walks of life.
Coming backward, moving a little bit backward.
Speaking about the parish development model, President Yoweri Museveni indicated that the government will onwards take responsibility of the fees charged by the banks for transaction.
We are stopping the deductions which are done by the bank. You will get your 1 million full. That means, therefore, that in each year, in each parish, 100 families will get that 1 million.
Parish development model is an economic program government launched in this tenure of office with the aim of uplifting the 39% of the households into the money economy. 61 medals were awarded at the event to, among others, the Prime Minister of Uganda, Robin Nabanja, business mogul Sudhir Pereira, and the Deputy Managing Director of Uganda Civil Aviation Authority, Olive Birungi.
As Ugandans, as we work for this nation of ours, it's good to be appreciated. So this is a smile you see on my face. It's a beautiful day in Mubende.
For me, the medal is a testament of the effort and the energy that we put in to organize the NRM conference. I must say it was a very, very hectic period, which meant that we sometimes did run our dry runs at 2 a.m., 4 a.m. to make sure that we try it out on airlines that were arriving at that time.
I already got one medal earlier in Rukangiri with the 50th years of Independence Day. So nice to be once again, to be recognized.
Leaders in Mubende underscored that the district and the neighboring communities have registered tremendous strides during the National Resistance Movement regime. This in terms of infrastructure and social service delivery. Jackson Onyango reporting for NTV in Mubende municipality.
Thank you very much, Jackson Onyango, bringing us that report. That was as events unfolded in Mubende yesterday at the national celebrations of 39 years of the NRM. Captain,
yes,
Mr. Henry Kitambula spoke about corruption, but seemed to throw it on the locals or the population. Yet, what is heavily affecting transformational initiatives in this country is the grand corruption at the top. And that particular aspect of the 10-point program has blighted efforts by everyone else to ensure that these other aspects that the National Resistance Army and movement wanted to achieve can actually be achieved.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to massage anybody here. The number 7 says elimination of corruption and misuse of power. There is a lot of misuse of power in this country. And the people who are misusing the power are allowing corruption to generate. You cannot lose 11 trillion a year and talk about the population. The money is being lost by the people who have got power. Let us not, you see, the problem is, and I think this is where the problem, let us criticize ourselves. We are not doing well. Not on corruption and not on power. There are people who are misusing power, and there are people who have forgotten where they have come from. And I'm not going to be kind. I've never been kind. And then there is sectarianism. One group is against another group. This must stop. The other thing that must stop, our economy is not doing well because we have not done very well. There is a lot of for example, stealing some of our minerals. The other day you had the Auditor General saying a lot of gold is being exported unofficially.
Yes.
Are you with me? Now this is corruption. We are talking about oil now. We are talking about looking for money to build the pipeline. At the same time we want to build a refinery. We need money. This country needs money to grow. Therefore, we cannot, in these areas we're talking about, some things must be looked at. Now, we promise people we shall unite this country. I want you to sit there and ask yourself, are we united as a nation, as Uganda, as a country? Now, this is elimination of all form of sectarianism. Today, there are people, by the way, you think you people quietly, undercurrent. The Baganda thinks they are not liked in this country. Let us be honest to each other and stop pretending that these things do happen. So, why? Because of actions of people in power. People talk about land grabbing. People are talking about misuse of power by certain entities of government. And they have been accused. People have said, for example, they are being arrested by implicating them in things which they have not done, and so on and so forth. Now, we need to be a little bit more serious. Our country is on a sensitive level. Our economy depends on how we do it. So by creating an atmosphere where people are going back to the fear which the revolution was fighting for, one asks you, but when we went in the revolution, this is what we were fighting for. Why is it back? Why are people afraid? Why are people hating each other? Why is it that you cannot run political parties? All political parties, people are fighting each other. You hear money is exchanging hands. You hear all sorts of things. I don't think we should continue at this level.
Okay.
And by the way, if this is a liberation, then yesterday, these are the points we should have talked about. How can we go back to the main reasons why we had a liberation? And can we people now say, we had a fundamental change? Okay. Can we now have a change of these things that have gone wrong in these last few years? By the way, me, unlike other people, I'm not worried about the 39 years. The questions, can we correct mistakes? You know, and let's admit, those are mistakes. When you hear somebody grabbing somebody's land, a big man, intimidating each other.
Yes.
When you hear big organizations losing money, the other day we had the Bank of Uganda losing money. Now, when you hear those kind of things, where does the population come in? It's misuse of power.
I think as somebody who is in the government,
let's break and then return so that you can submit on that.
Okay.
I'll be very glad to hear your perspective on it, no doubt. Stay with us. Let's go for a break. When we return, the conversation does continue into two other aspects as we shall be closing this edition of Kickstarter. Welcome back. The Kickstarter does continue here on Morning at NTV. We are talking about the 39 years of the NRM in light of Liberation Day celebrations that were held yesterday in Mubende. In studio, I have with me Captain Francis Babu, a senior citizen. I also have with me the Deputy RCC Rubaga, Henry Kitambula, and a leaning cadre of the National Resistance Movement. You had a submission, Mr. Kitambula. Please take it away.
As somebody in the government, I must correct this.
Yeah.
First of all, my senior is exaggerating.
Your senior, Captain Babu.
Yes, because we don't have a lot of power misuse and power abuse. Okay. In fact, when you look at those who commit some of these crimes, many of them are not entrenched within the powers, and we have really removed what we call impunity. If you remember, a state minister for labor, Herbert Kabafunza, I think, in 2017, who solicited bribe of 5 million, was convicted, I think in 2021, and also relieved of his responsibility as a minister. Right now we have ministers who are in a court of law, in courts of law, because of misuse of I think there was theft of iron sheets.
Mabati, yeah.
Mabati, and some of them have been dropped from their positions. You have seen many times some of us RDCs being dropped if we misbehave and misuse our power. So there is no impunity, and I don't want my brother here to exaggerate. And issues of big people grabbing land. I've heard of this talk, but I've worked in many parts of this country. I've not seen a big person really grabbing land. When I was in Mukono, actually Mukono is my home district, but before going there, I could always hear people talking about soldiers grabbing land, this grabbing land. When I went there, I saw, again, these just brokers who were disturbing people. And one of them, I arrested him, somebody called, I think, Cassidy. I arrested him, and he had around 5 files, but he was just masquerading because he goes and talks to so and so, you see. So at times, people should report those masqueraders. Somebody who is close to me, if he comes to you and he says he's working for me, you call me, you tell me. Because some of these people are masqueraders. Personally, I've arrested some of them. So it's not true that big people are grabbing people's land. But not saying that there is no land grabbing, because we are fighting it. But it's not done by big people. We are united, and the level of sectarianism is not as it used to be. Before we go into sectarianism, because that's a whole discussion of it on its own, let me ask you this question, and I will cite examples. Just over a week ago, the Auditor General outed a report for the financial year 2023-2024, in which he said that if we do not halt or reform, for example, the pension system, we could lose up to 4 trillion by the year 2030. That is a damning assessment of corruption. When pensioners are overpaid, when gratuity is overpaid, when ghost pensioners and ghost workers receive this money, this is not the recipients of the money being corrupt. Absolutely not. It is people within the system, public service, the pension sector, understanding and working within the loopholes existing and deliberately created by them or cartels to steal money. Now, when such amounts of money are stolen, that is grand theft of the highest order. We haven't seen arrests, neither have we had the president lament, because he has a tendency of lamenting too, although he doesn't have powers to act like Chris again. When the Auditor General brings out a report, it goes to Parliament. And Parliament, through the various committees, can have a debate, can summon the officers responsible, and then give recommendations. And those recommendations can be taken over by cabinet, and then the executive can act. So right now the report is out. It has to go to Parliament. I think it's already in Parliament. Parliament has to carry out a debate through the various committees, invite the responsible officers as they have always done, and when the recommendations are out, definitely government will take action. But we want to thank God, and you thank government, that government itself has put in place checks and balances to check the government. You see, so that is something that we should also thank God. Maybe we would say, you the checkers, be very serious on checking us. Very serious on checking us.
Have you just told us that we're not doing what we're supposed to do well enough, so you take advantage of that, especially
not
those
taking
that
advantage.
Personally, not corrupt. My apologies for saying you, but my reference was to the collective.
You're referring to all of us.
Yeah.
But maybe you task Parliament, especially the committees that check corruption. For example, PAC, COSASE, and so on and so forth. Let them also show us what have they done. Because we have always had corruption talks. And I don't want to own this, but I'm saying we have always had corruption talks in COSASE, those committees, PAC, and maybe that's why some of their recommendations are not implemented because of that talk. They should also check themselves,
Captain,
to ensure that they do the right thing.
I won't ask the question. React to that.
It's very unfortunate that a whole RCC can sit here and deceive himself. The facts are very simple. These people don't come out and grab the land directly. They go through people. They use those brokers he's talking about. Those are their little men they are using. Now, let us not deceive ourselves. There is a lot of problems in corruption in this country. He can sit here and try to paint a white paper, whatever it is. There's nothing to write. He's talking about COSASE. He's talking about those committees that they're also corrupt. But they give report to Parliament, and the reports are not implemented. They are giving reports, and the reports come out saying this and this and this has happened. Now, when we are talking, and by the way, you not cure this unless if you admit there is a problem. You must admit there's a problem, because I know the people who are using who is who. It's known all over the country. Let us stop pretending here. Let us not stop painting wrong things. What is wrong must be eliminated. What is good, we must support. And there's a lot of good things done, by the way. Please don't get me wrong.
No.
There's a lot of good things done by this government, but there's a lot of things which are wrong. For example, I was reading when the president was talking, he gave the number of kids in primary school in each of the regions, like Acholi and so on and so forth, 39%, 32%, 11% in different regions in this country. Now, that shows you that all our children do not finish primary school. We only have 39%, 11%. Right. What is the problem? We need to find out what the problem is. Now, I am sorry, I'm not going to be kind. There are a lot of bad people in this kind.
But my senior should give us the names of those.
No. I don't work like you, RCC. RCC, please.
Those officers who buy land, please,
RCC. You people like to go around talking about people's names. I don't do that. This is, by the way, what I'm saying here. You don't. Everybody knows it in this town.
Allow me interject very briefly, and I will allow you complete that point. Yes. But maybe there is also a problem in how you see these things. The mindset of not wanting to name names helps shield those who steal because they know no one is going to talk about them directly.
My friend, it's not my job. I do not work for ISO. I do not work for police. I do not work for RCC.
You're Ugandan.
His job is to name people, not me.
Okay.
My job is to tell you it is there. Let him go and investigate. He works for government. I do not.
You're giving me the info.
So this kind of people, when they get hold of, by the way, RCCs have been named among those people who allow these things to go on. So let us not pretend that they are angels. They are not. What I am trying to say here, and I'm very, very clear.
Please.
There are people whose job is to go and investigate. There are people in this country who are paid to look for corruption. And therefore, listen, I know what the law does. Until you have completely got, you see, for example, the man, the brokers he was arresting, he did not know who their boss is. There is a boss who sends those brokers, and there's another boss above that boss. So you need to investigate them
until you reach above.
Until you reach where the guy is. Now,
the guy is in jail.
These people, they should not be deceived. Corruption, 11 trillion, tell me. 11 trillion. Who is lamenting? The IGG. Did the IGG give you names? Why should I give you names when he has got a whole combatant of people who can go and arrest all these people? Then you have some people grabbing land in an area, and everybody, even in government, are involved in the grabbing. So the whole point I am trying to say here, let me put it this way. I do not want to accuse anybody, but I want us to put things that have gone wrong and correct them, and so that we can move in a good country like we promised in not only 10, by the way, they are now, is it 14? All these points that we have. And my brother was telling me about the manifesto which came out, and they gave you what they are supposed to do. That's different. We won't talk about manifesto. We'll go into manifesto one of these days, and I'll give you where they have done right and where they have done wrong. But we must criticize ourselves. And the only way, by the way, to make ourselves better is to criticize ourselves.
Now, in light of that, and this is a question that will go to Henry Kitambula as we enter the final bend of the discussion. Naming names is a practical way to fight corruption sometimes.
Name and shame.
But naming names without evidence is also problematic. And the law is one that says somebody is innocent until they are proved guilty. To the extent that there are a lot of corrupt persons who have understood the dynamics of holding onto their own, or rather blighting their tracks so that they cannot be found out. In other words, no evidence can be found against them. And that is also a bit of a problem. The connivance and the tendency to cooperate in theft by covering up for so and so because they are a cadre is rampant within the national resistance movement. So I do not know whether there is any particular intention to tackle this corruption scourge in the best natural way, or like you say,
actually,
you've done the best you could do as an RCC. You're leaving it to the rest of the top guys.
No, remember, we enacted a Whistleblowers Act. And when I heard my senior saying he cannot name any person, then it takes me back to the statement I made earlier of empowering Ugandans to give us information. Because you cannot successfully fight corruption unless the population, the public, can cooperate with you. So if a senior fears to come to me or to any other person to say there is this, investigate, begin from here,
let me tell you,
then that means we have a challenge.
Let me vindicate Captain and maybe any other person out there, including myself. For example, the saga, the scandal at Bank of Uganda, the theft of that money, officials redirecting money meant for, apparently, they tell us money was meant for the World Bank and the African Development Bank. Chris Higenyi has no ability to get that kind of information from the Bank of Uganda or Ministry of Finance. So I wouldn't expect anybody lower out there in the society to even begin to attempt to want to get that information. The ones who have that information are actually within the system.
And of course that's why we go to the information. But for me, I'm looking at, because the money goes back to local governments. I told you the other time. The money goes back to local governments. All the implementation of all the programs of government is at the district and sub-county level. So when this money goes in billions, moreover, to the district, to the municipality, to the city, we want this money to be put to the right use. If we can have money put to the right use, if we can fight corruption and the swindling of this money at that level, we cannot even be talking about the trillions the IGIG is talking about, because that is where the highest theft is. So for me, and I've tried this, in Namaingo, I don't know whether I've ever told you, I successfully handled a matter where the officials, 3 officials, were eating money meant for the youth. And I successfully
syndicated corruption.
But the information came from some youth. They are the ones who came and said, yes, don't mention our names, but there is ABCD, investigate beginning from here. So we successfully investigated. If they had not given us the information, we wouldn't really succeed in prosecuting these people. So for me, you know how powerful a Ugandan down there is. Is the one who sees somebody running away with a sack of cement meant to construct a school, somebody running away with medicine, and so on and so forth. So my brother, we should not leave out the population if we are to fight corruption. We cannot manage ourselves alone.
Okay.
And people at times are intimidated. You see this PDM when the president has been moving around. Somebody may fail to take information to the chairman of the district or even to the RDC. He waits for the president and then says, they remove 4,000 from me, they remove 10,000 from me. But if we can empower them and say, look, don't wait for the president, you come to the RDC, go to the chairperson of the 3, go to the chairperson of the district.
I mean, it's a tradition.
Then we can really
maybe, and this one I'll be very candid with it, it's a tradition the president loves to play along with, because many times it's until he says something that even the investigators follow. Before he says, the investigators look like they have not heard or seen the papers. The Daily Monitor does a good job in outing some of these cases of grand theft and corruption, but it's until the president comes out and attempts to belittle the Daily Monitor on account of doing the same that the police wakes up and says, okay, we are going to investigate. That's a bit not normal. The force, for example, right now, should have the Auditor General's report on its table and going for people left, center, and right. We would be much more, thought that corruption fight is actually being fought. Otherwise, if we are waiting, for example, for the president to say he's not happy so that the force can also be unhappy about it, then it's a bit unnerving. Captain,
yes.
Wrap this up in 46 seconds.
Thank you very much. I hear people, please, I don't like this elementary condescending attitude that there is a whistleblowing, whatever it is. Listen, even whistleblowers are sometimes exposed, and a lot of people don't want to tell the government. So our attitude is wrong. The attitude of putting things right could work. My friend is telling me, oh, whistleblowers. He wants me to become a whistleblower on TV?
Are you willing to be a whistleblower off TV?
I mean, this is condescending, elementary condescending attitude. Let me put it this way. There are problems. And the other is painting a picture as if we were in a country of angels. No. There are problems, and we need to find a solution to those problems.
All right.
And let me repeat this. Until the people in government themselves admit that there is a problem, we cannot put it right.
Thank you very much, Captain Francis Babu, senior citizen and seasoned political commentator, for your perspectives as the National Resistance Army and movement celebrate 39 years. And many thanks to you too, Deputy RCC Henry Kitambula, for bringing us up to speed with ongoing efforts to fight corruption. I love the sting that you have for the local government. We've seen time and again massive corruption cases cited at local government level. That will do it for this edition of the Kickstarter in Morning at NTV. But before we close,